Welcome back to the Big Small Business Show. And in studio with us, we've got Rael Levitt. He's the founder and CEO of Inospace. And we've been hearing the incredible story of zero to hero to zero to hero. And actually, what's most fascinating for me is the psychology about becoming a hero after becoming a zero. How do you pick yourself up? And we all go through that to some extent every day as an entrepreneur. When we fail, whether we fail on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, we're all failing at some point. And it's the perseverance, there's something that goes on in our chemistry, in our character, that allows us to stand up again and again. So you need finance. You go to a bank and they actually finance you.
Yes. And, look, as much as I had bad luck, also good luck happened. And it was just one of those things that the property transfer got delayed. And while it got delayed, I managed to lease up the property. So by the time I got to the financing, it was already producing a yield of like 16% at that stage. Interest rates were much lower. So the bank looked at this and they thought it was a really good risk. And, I'd known the bank before because I'd done auctions for them. They were the one bank which actually didn't treat me negatively. So they sort of understood that I was an entrepreneur and they decided to back me in this transaction. I think the most critical part was, for me, I just knew I wasn't going to win in real estate because there were hugely successful South African companies in real estate. I had to do something which was absolutely innovative and something which was new, which had never been done before in South Africa. And so I started literally just roaming the world on the web, looking at different models, and I had some pretty good ideas, but I saw a particular business that I liked in Germany. And so with a huge amount of balls or chutzpah, I literally contacted the CEO of this German-based company and wanted to engage with him with what he had done. And eventually he actually invites me over to Germany. I jumped on a plane and I spent a week in Berlin looking at this model. And it really was something which it attracted me immediately. I think one of the nice things about being South African is that we don't have to invent things which have never been invented before. We often have to just look around the world. And I always say there are a million great entrepreneurs around. We can look around the world and we can see things which have worked in other countries and say, could that be introduced into the local market? And so the idea of Inospace was born. And even the name was innovation space. It was doing something different in this industrial sector. And so I started with the first building, and it was a runaway success from get-go.
And today, how many buildings?
Well, today, I went from that one building which literally cost 30 million rand. Today, it's a fund of over 3 billion. I started with the one in Cape Town. Today, it's 52 odd sites in South Africa, and we're also we're just about to go offshore. We have one in the UK, and we are rolling out in Europe. So it's about 500,000 square meters of space at these various parks, and it's grown into, again, in property circles, it's not an enormous company, but it is a few billion rand fund.
And just coming back to your first success, now your second success, are you taking lessons? And I'm not talking from the tsunami, so to speak. I'm saying in terms of now that you've had the experience from the first one, that you've redesigned Inospace in terms of how you've built the business differently to the first one.
Yeah, look, the first one, as an example, you start off as an entrepreneur. You have to make money because it's to keep wolves from the door. And so literally you sort of build the plane as you're flying it. On the second round, obviously there's 20 years of experience, and both good and bad experiences help you. So and that's the difficulty, actually, is not to get too caught up in the bad stuff, and then you almost lose that entrepreneurial edge, and is also to take the good stuff. So what I literally did, and I'm a big believer in goal planning and scenario planning and writing things down, and I always sit down with a pen and I write notes to myself in our journal. So what I literally did is say, look, let me have a look at my 20-year career and say, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? And in all facets, to take risk was, I always, I had the ability to take risk in my early years. In fact, in this business, I needed to take more risk. How to deal with people, how to manage people. And so I really try to take the best out of both scenarios, also knowing, what could go wrong. Because I think often when you start a business, you never think what could go wrong.
Yeah.
You only think what could. I think it's the natural thing for entrepreneurs to be very positive. And so really to look at both and then to sort of craft a plan and also knowing that the environment changes. I mean, the 20-year-old you and the 40-year-old you are not the same people. But the you in South Africa in the year 2000 and the year 2023 is also different. And so really you really have to sort of craft it and look at that environment. And I took all factors into account.
If there's somebody watching right now that has failed and they don't know what to do,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
Well, I love that quote, which gave me a lot of sustenance at the time. When Steve Jobs tells the story, when the late Steve Jobs, when he loses his job at Apple, he said, "When I started again, it lifted the burden of my past to become an entrepreneur and to start all over again." And for me, that was you can get rid of the burden of the past and actually be a beginner again. And being a beginner again is very exciting.
Rael Levitt, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Big Small Business Show, and thank you for your inspiration. I've learned a lot from today. I'm sure you have as well. And for those entrepreneurs out there who are perhaps tripping or stumbling, I just want you to know that there is a second life as an entrepreneur. You can stand up again and again. In fact, we have to. And as you heard from Rael there, if you think it, write it down and make it a reality.